excited to be with you. It has been an incredible journey for us. But we really want to jumpstart you tonight. And we're going to challenge you 10 days. You can do anything for 10 days. And it's our brain boost to optimize your energy, focus, and mental clarity. To start, we wanted to really highlight that it's not really about you. It's about generations of you. Your habits affect your genes, they actually turn on or off certain genes that make illnesses more or less likely, not only in you, but in your children and even your grandchildren. It's a concept called epigenetics. So as I thought about how we would start the evening, I started thinking about my grandfather, who I'm named after, who was my best friend when I was growing up. But he had bad habits. He was a candy maker. I mean, that was his real job. I remember I was 4 years old. I'd stand on the stool in the kitchen and we'd make fudge together. But he had his first heart attack at 49. And he died way too early. I don't want that for my children. I don't want it for me. And Tana's story is sort of the same, isn't it?
Well, and this is personal for both of us. I mean, it's wonderful having a partner that, I can do this with, and this is something we plant in our family. And as we were starting to do this, we realized this is very personal because we both had families that we grew up in that we loved very much, but they weren't healthy. And there was a lack of, no lack of love, but a lack of education about nutrition and health. And my grandmother, who I loved very much, was diabetic. She moved in with us when I was very young, but not so she could really take care of me so that I could, and we could take care of her. And my mother worked a lot. She worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. And by the time I was 11, I was helping to give her insulin shots. And at 11 years old, when you're told that you have to be very careful giving her insulin because you could make her very sick and possibly even kill her if you give her the wrong dose, it becomes very personal. And I think that, if you hear my story, it had a lot to do with the journey that I went on. So yeah, it's very personal.
So your behavior is not just about you. Sobering, but also exciting, because if you do the right things, you're planting health. And you'll see that in some of the stories that we tell you tonight. So the 10-day brain boost, like the Daniel plan, is based on 5 very simple daily habits. So pray and meditate for God's strength. We have some great verses for you tonight. Be mindful of your food. Food is medicine or it's poison. You have to move your body. You were meant to move. You were made to move. So the simple point about exercise, walk like you're late, 45 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. It's been shown to be as effective as Zoloft for depression, and it has no side effects as opposed to some of the antidepressants. Well, that's because you're kicking people. I'm going to be closer. Do you mind?
No, I love it.
But we also want you to be stronger, which means you need to lift weights.
Absolutely. It's
even
critical.
If you're a woman, right?
Especially if you're a woman. So the misconception that women don't need or shouldn't lift weights is completely wrong. The more muscle mass you have on your body, not only does it decrease your risk of osteoporosis, but it makes you more sensitive to, so it makes you less insulin sensitive and less, it decreases your risk for diabetes. So you really want to put muscle mass on your body. It also increases your metabolism dramatically. So you want muscle mass on your body.
But I'm not lifting weights because I don't want to be big.
If you figure out how to do that, please let me know. It's so hard for women to put extra muscle mass on their body unless you are training for hours and hours every day, or you're taking steroids, or you are just genetically one of those very rare creatures that ends up with a lot of testosterone.
So actually, if you look at 5 pounds of fat, it's like this, versus 5 pounds of muscle, looks like this. So if you have that in your head, I'm not lifting weights because I don't want to be big, forget it. Now, if you're lifting weights and eating terribly,
Right.
you're going to get big. So that's not a good idea.
But you do need to eat more if you're eating the right foods, if you've got more muscle on your body.
The stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease, and the less likely you are to get out of the hospital alive if you end up in the hospital. We had a very personal story. So one of the doctors at Amen Clinics, his name's Garrett Howig, who is young, he's in his early 40s, he's really strong. He went to Hawaii and he got an infection called leptospirosis, and it kills 84% of people. And when he went in the hospital, I actually thought he was going to die. But 2 weeks later, he came out, and it was only because he was strong when he went in.
When Daniel called me, I was a trauma nurse, and he called me and he said that Garrett was in multi-organ failure. And he said, so, what's going on? What can we expect? And I'm like, you don't want me to tell you. It's not a good sign. He was on a circle bed and all these crazy things, and I'm like, it's really not a good sign. But and there's actually a study done, and I saw this when I was a nurse in the hospital. We actually noticed this, and I loved seeing this study because I had seen this repeatedly myself. What the study said was the survival rate for people who came out of the hospital, what they noticed was that people who survived traumas and burns, what they noticed was it was 4 times higher for people who had muscle mass. The more muscle mass you had on your body, the much higher chance you had of survival, but also the higher chance you had of going back to a normal life. So if you did survive, you had a much higher chance of actually going back to having a normal life. It was based on the amount of muscle mass you have on your body, because that's your body's protein reserve. And you go through protein, your metabolic demands go up so high when you are in an accident.
We're also going to talk to you about disciplining your thoughts. So the focus part of the Daniel plan is so important. In fact, if I had to say, do one thing. People used to ask me that all the time. What's the one thing I should do? And, my first reaction is the one thing you should do is stop being stupid and do them all. But, as I've sort of been more thoughtful about it, the one thing you should do is really get your mind right.
Yeah.
Because when you have the right attitude toward your health, everything changes.
Right.
And then we do this together. The health of your friends determines your longevity. In huge longevity studies, what they found, the number one predictor of longevity, besides being thoughtful, is people are contagious. If you hang out with unhealthy people, you're much more likely to die earlier, which is why I'm grateful I have a partner who doesn't fight me. I know some of you have partners who fight you. In doing the Daniel plan at Saddleback over the last 3 years, I've talked to many women and many men who said, my partner won't do it with me.
But it doesn't mean you can't, because we've seen this repeatedly. Even if your partner isn't on board with you, we repeatedly see that eventually, if you are the change just be the change that you want to see happen. Because eventually most partners will come around. And if they don't, then it's even more important that you hang out in groups like this, that you attend these seminars and groups and small groups, because you must surround yourself with the people, like-minded people. That's how you're going to stay on track. It's really critical.
You remember the person who came up to us at church, and she saw Tana and I, and she came up and said hi, and she said, I lost 35 pounds. And Tana said, congratulations. And she said, no, that's not it. And I'm like, well, what? She said, well, when we started, my husband wouldn't do it with me. And you told me in one of the lectures not to bitch at him. Don't nag him. And so I didn't, but I had to get one zinger in. I'm like, what's that? She said, I'm going to be happy and healthy long after you're dead.
We don't want you to do that, okay? Be clear,
well, it was
be
actually
thoughtful.
very effective. He was 300 pounds, had a lot of bad habits, but as he saw her get well, He wanted what she had.
Right.
And then when she talked to us, he was down 75 pounds. How exciting is that? And their children were better, and she was bringing the habits to work. Now that's exciting. So it's critical to have a support group.
Right.
So why 10 days? I was thinking about that. Why 10 days? Because it gets you started.
Right.
You will see results quickly. When Tana wrote her book, The Omni Diet, on the cover, it said lose up to 12 pounds the first 2 weeks. And both of us were opposed to that. But in fact, that's what happens a lot when people do just what we tell them to do. And stop changing it. Just do what we tell you to do for 10 days.
So look, we don't want you building a camel. Okay, you don't get to take like different pieces of different things, and sometimes
is that how God built camels?
Okay, stop. So, so I mean, sometimes that works, but usually it doesn't. So if you really just stick to a plan, there's a reason why. Because we've really tried to take, Dr. Amen, Dr. Hyman, they've taken what works based on the science, they put it together, and if you just do that thing, then it works. Because they put together a really logical plan. Now, if you want to do a different plan, do a different plan. But once you go through this plan, you'll see why. It's a really logical plan, and it's really not a diet. And that's why I was so opposed to the publisher when they wanted to put, they always have to have their thing on covers. But I used to say, give me 2 weeks, this will change your life. And when they saw all the testimonials, they're like, we have to put that on the cover. Same thing here. That's why we're giving you 10 days. Because it's those 10 days, it's those first 10 days that will grab you. That's when inflammation starts to come down. That's when you feel really good. It's critical that you do these 10 days just like they are.
Because one of the things we found is you have to have an early win. If you have an early win, you get excited and you stick with it. Plus, specific reason for 10 days. Your taste buds make themselves new every 10 days. So your cravings will begin to go away, and healthy food will begin to taste amazing because they've been deadened by the food industry that knows how to combine fat, sugar, and salt to work on the heroin centers of your brain.
It's actually called the bliss point. They actually coined that term in the 70s. When the food industry found out about it, they jumped on it. All of the different companies started hiring food designers to literally work on competing with each other for the bliss point, that part of your brain that's the pleasure button, so they could take up real estate in grocery stores. Now, I don't know about you, but that irritates me. So just knowing that makes me okay, that's not going to happen. So I'm fairly oppositional with stuff like that.
But obviously this is just the beginning. And one of the things I like to say is God gave you a big brain for a reason. So this is a smart plan. It's a scientifically based plan. And we've proven here at Saddleback that it works for a lot of people. Before we get into the 10 days, we have to give you a little preparation. So we want to teach you a little of the skills you'll need during those 10 days. So first thing, you have to make a decision. I mean, it has to be an important decision that I'm really going to get healthy, that this is important to me. We're going to teach about assessing your brain and knowing some really important numbers, because if your important numbers are off, you're just not going to get better. And so it's critical to know what they are. And then Tana's going to give you the 10-day detox. What are the foods to lose and the foods to choose? We'll talk about some simple supplements because I think they can be really important. I think of supplements sort of like insurance. They mind the gap. We'll talk a little bit about your thinking, killing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that come into your mind and ruin your day. Again, this is just critical. We'll talk about failure and mastering your cravings and your decision making. So if you want a reason to get healthy, I'm going to give you 13 warning signs your brain is in trouble. And I want you to write down how many of them apply to you. If your memory is worse than it was 10 years ago.
It's actually not normal to leave your keys in the refrigerator. We get that question, believe it or not. Isn't that normal?
But I'm 40. I can't remember anything. That's normal. No, that's a sign you have bad habits. Oh, I'm 50 and I can't remember anything. That's normal because I'm 50. It's like, no, it's because you have bad habits. Or I'm 65 and my memory's no good. I have many senior moments.
So wait a minute. The cabinet doors you're saying?
No, your cabinet doors have always been open. You've never closed them.
So that's not a problem then.
Well, unless your husband gets irritated
I
about
see.
it.
Just making sure. Since some of you have seen that on PBS.
It is never normal for your memory to deteriorate. We'll talk about this, that aging happens to be optional. If you have low energy, that often means you have low blood flow to your brain. If your mood is low, do you know if you have depression, it actually, for women, doubles the risk of Alzheimer's disease? And for men, it quadruples the risk. So mood is very important. If you have chronic stress increases a hormone called cortisol that kills cells in the hippocampus, the brain's major memory structure. So you all want to be on a stress management program. If you have brain fog, if you make bad decisions, you know, decision making is totally a brain function. If your blood sugar is high. So Tana's grandmother had diabetes for a long time, and every bad thing happened from...
She went legally blind. She had neuropathy in her extremities, which is pain, numbness, tingling. She had heart disease, which ultimately killed her. I mean, diabetes is a very wicked...
So high blood sugar is one of the things you should really protect yourself. So you should know what your blood sugar is. We'll talk about that in a minute when knowing your important numbers. And the food plan we're going to put you on is totally geared to stabilizing your blood sugar. Too low, you make bad decisions because you don't have enough. Too high, it actually acts like little shards of glass in your blood vessels. It causes them to be brittle and break. It's a disaster. High blood pressure. As your blood pressure goes up, the actual physical size of your brain goes down. Now, one of the things I want you to leave here tonight is with brain envy. Brain envy is something I got after I looked at my own brain 23 years ago. I'm like, oh, it's not that good. So I want it to be better. And so I don't ever want my brain to shrink. Do you know what shrinks your brain? High blood sugar, high blood pressure, low vitamin D, low omega-3 fatty acid levels, if you have sleep apnea, and if you're overweight. Some of you have heard me speak before. You know, I talk about this thing called the dinosaur syndrome. There are 142 studies now that say as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. Now, that should just scare the fat off anyone. And initially, when I gave my first lecture here in the refinery, Pastor Warren heard it, and he's like, oh, I don't want to be a dinosaur.
When you used to say that.
Oh.
But apparently it was effective, so.
She threatened me. She said,
like wives often do.
You can't say that. You'll hurt people's feelings. And if you knew me personally, I'm actually fairly nice. I don't like hurting anybody's feelings. But I think I'm hurting you more if I don't tell you the truth. And with 140 studies, there's really no arguing about it. The fat on your body is not your friend. It produces something called inflammatory cytokines that increase inflammation, and inflammation is a major cause of depression and dementia.
Yeah, they're almost like little mini tumors. I mean, they're not good things. So,
if you don't sleep, if you have sleep apnea, weight issues, and sexual dysfunction. And Tana says I put it in there because I always think about sex, but it's actually true.
Most men do. Yes.
It's about blood flow, right? So I used to say your brain uses 20% of the blood flow in your body. So even though it's only 2% of your body's weight, it uses 20% of the blood flow and 25% of the calories. So it's the most energy-hungry organ in your body. And so what I used to say, whatever's good for your heart is good for your brain. And then I wrote my book called The Brain in Love, and so I'm thinking about sex more than normal.
Chloe is here.
And then I began to think, whatever's good for your heart is good for your brain, is good for your genitals, because it's all about blood flow. And whatever is bad for your heart is bad for your brain, is bad for your genitals. And then I read a study that said 40%.
Can we keep this PG, please?
It's all PG. 40% of 40-year-olds have erectile dysfunction. So why do you think on TV all the time there are commercials for Cialis, Levitra, and Viagra? It's because it's rampant. But you know what that means, that 40% of 40-year-olds have brain dysfunction. It's about blood flow.
It's true.
And 70% of 70-year-olds have erectile dysfunction, and it's very clear 70% of 70-year-olds have brain dysfunction.
Well, and since you're about to be 60,
I'm
this
good.
is important.
I'm good. But the reason I'm good is it matters to me. I'm thinking that I want to be cognitively and passionately intact for as long as possible. So, whatever your motivation is, we want to tap into it so that you want to make a decision to change.
Right. So, and if you think about what he just said, first of all, we want to make sure you're in the right room. Otherwise, it's a great night. You guys can all go out and play and do something else. So, let's just make sure you're in the right room. But if you think about what Daniel just said, you know, if what affects your brain affects your heart, affects your genitals, and, you know, so on and so forth, then whatever's affecting your brain is also causing diabetes, heart disease, insomnia, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, digestive issues, autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, high cholesterol, joint pain. This is what we see in our clinics all the time. In fact, our best testimonials come from our nutrition department. So, and people come to see us for psychiatric issues. People come to see us for mood, for all these other things. But when we implement the same principles we're going to share with you tonight, I mean, the Daniel Plan was orchestrated and designed by Dr. Hyman and you, and really put together that way. So these are the same principles you guys are going to learn. People their brain function gets better. So you can't really separate these. So that's why I say, let's make sure you're in the right place. Because if you're suffering from these things, it's also going to affect your brain if you implement these principles. It all gets better together.
So Dr. Hyman is a family doctor, and so he deals directly with a lot of these issues. I'm a psychiatrist, and we have 6 Amen clinics, and so we treat ADD, anxiety, depression, memory problems, relationship problems, temper problems. But what we often find is that when people do this program, physically they're better and their brain is better.
And that's why people often say, well, we started working with weight loss, and we have a nutritionist now, we have a functional medicine doctor, and it seemed a little odd at first until you realize why. And then it made perfect sense because they were all connected. And it's like, we just think that people get better when you're looking at everything together. So we want to make sure you're in the right place. And then our promise to you, it's always a little hard, even with 2 hours. It's just a lot of information. So we're going to go deep on some of these. And then some of you, as always, are going to have questions. We're going to answer those questions in the end. We're going to do as many as we can. We will not get to all of them. We know that. But we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. We'll show you where to get more information, either through our websites or other ways that you can get more information with us and go deeper. So it's just always the challenge, and we'll do the best we can. Okay?
All right, so I really want you to understand this diagram. So what this is activity in the brain with age. And I hate this now in 2 months that I'm going to turn 60. But this is actually based on a study of 8,000 people. And little kids have really busy, active brains. But as we age, the brain gets less and less active. So sort of like as your skin falls off your face as you age, the same process happens in the brain. And at some point, you become symptomatic. You can't remember things, you're tired, you're depressed, you're anxious, or you have behavior problems. And I don't like this. These are SPECT scans. That's the study that we do at Amen Clinics. They help us so much. So if you look at down from the top, what a 30-year-old brain looks like, typically full, even, beautiful. Color doesn't mean anything, it's the shape. And then you look at a 55-year-old brain, and then you look at an 80-year-old brain, it's not that good. So you can see sort of the wrinkles and the pits, and that's typical, not healthy, typical. This is typically, it's an 82-year-old brain, just looks awful, which is why the incidence of depression goes way up in the elderly. But compare this to my friend, Dr. Doris Rapp, who has, for an 82-year-old, a stunningly gorgeous brain. And at 82, she's still working. She still plays tennis. She's trim. She has a bunch of energy. She's still making a big difference in the lives of her patients. So she has meaning and purpose. But this is not something she started when she was 81. This is something that had been part of her life for decades.
You know, I always get a little concerned when you come home and you're like, oh, I saw the most beautiful brain today. Like, am I supposed to be jealous? Am I supposed to worry? Like, it's the weirdest thing.
Do you know, 2 weeks after we met, which is nearly 9 years ago, I scanned her. And if you actually date my daughter for more than 4 months, you get scanned too.
I thought it was a little odd that that was like the thing he wanted to see, like intimately, was my brain. So.
It was the most important part of you. All right. So, does anybody have brain envy? Anybody? The rest of you. All right. All right, brain health requires 3 things. So I'm going to give you the short course in brain health. I've been doing this 30 years. Brain envy, you have to care. Freud had it all wrong. He had the wrong body part to have envy for. And then you have to avoid anything that hurts it and do things that help it. So here are the things to avoid. Now, it's a long list, but I don't want to go through all of these. I already talked about some of them. Obviously, you have a brain injury. Well, we see at Amen Clinics, it is a very big cause of impulsivity and poor decisions because you hurt the front part of your brain that's involved with things like judgment, forethought, impulse control, and so on. So you want to protect your head. Brand new study out just this week. If you, for the people who are homeless, almost 50% of them had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. So I'm not a fan of contact sports for kids. We did the first and the largest study on active and retired NFL players. It's just not a good idea. Drug and alcohol abuse, I don't know, some of you think of alcohol as a health food. You really need to stop that. People who drink eat more. People who drink get into more marital problems. It's not good for you. It's a very special carbohydrate. Most carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. Alcohol is 7.
And I'm going to jump in there. It's basically considered a super carbohydrate, and so are most of the gluten-free foods. So in case we don't get to that later, things that are gluten-free foods with the starches, anything that has potato starch, tapioca starch, those foods are super carbohydrates because they just jack up your blood sugar really fast.
So I shouldn't be gluten-free?
No, you should be gluten-free, but you should be eating whole foods, not foods that have all these starches in it that are replacement.
It's a very important point because a lot of people will go, oh, it's gluten-free. And I'm like, well, read the label.
Those are worse than sugar, by the way. I mean, they actually boost your blood sugar faster than sugar. So
we talked about obesity, not exercising, a poor diet, we'll go into that. Not sleeping. Do you know if you get less than 6 hours of sleep at night, it lowers blood flow to your brain and you make more bad decisions. So if you want to protect your decision making, you have to really work on your sleep. And if you're using alcohol to get to sleep, you might want to rethink that because alcohol's a downer, but what happens 3-4 hours later when it wears off, it wakes you up. So that might not be a good strategy.
And I want to touch on this, the thyroid thing. As somebody who had thyroid cancer 3 times, you want to pay attention to this because going through that roller coaster with thyroid, it really can mess up your emotions, cause depression. And if no one's really paying attention to that, and you're not seeing someone who really understands it, it's hugely problematic. So if you are struggling with any kind of thyroid problem, make sure you're seeing someone who really understands it.
So really an expert.
Because someone they didn't tell me, and I was going through thyroid cancer, and I thought I was like losing my mind. So it's really something to pay attention to. I know I probably am, but
I would never say that.
I know you wouldn't say it out loud.
Not if I wanted to live. Emotional trauma is another thing that's really important and very common, especially in people who are really struggling with their health. Because sometimes if you've been traumatized as a child, especially sexual trauma, people will actually eat as a form of self-medication. And we're going to give you other things to do. And so looking at this list, we have a high school course that's in 42 states and 7 countries, and I'll go through these, and invariably some smart alecky teenage boy will raise his hand and go, how can you have any fun? Which is funny, Dennis Rodman actually asked me the same question when I scanned him for Celebrity Rehab. And you know what I tell the kids is we play a game called Who Has More Fun? Because I know some of you, you're looking at some of these things and you're like, well, how can you have any fun? You know, I'm already feeling deprived.
You know, I'm not thinking like insomnia, sleep apnea.
It's usually the drugs, the alcohol, contact sports. And so we play this game called Who Has More Fun? The kid with the good brain or the kid with the bad brain? Who gets the girl and gets to keep her because he doesn't act like an idiot? Who gets into the college that he wants to get into? Who gets the best job, makes the most money, has the coolest vacations, makes the most meaningful difference with their life? It's the person with the good brain. Right. So right away, we want to be attacking this deprivation mindset. Oh, I can't do this. To say, well, what do you get in return? Which is a good brain. Which means better energy, better motivation, better mood, better forethought, better decision making. So you stay married to the person you want because you don't say stupid things that hurt their feelings. So, brain envy, avoid bad, do good. And it all starts with decision making, which means you have to have a great brain. Learning new things, mental workouts, physical activity, great nutrition, healthy sleep, a clean environment, stable blood sugar. And one of the things we highlighted with the Daniel Plan was a positive peer group. Mm-hmm. People just got better together. And you know, the secret to this, write this down, is the fastest way to get healthy. Yep. Is find the healthiest person you can stand. And spend as much time around him or her as possible. You are contagious. So let's just be clear. It's not about you. It's about the people you love. So in America, and Pastor Warren has said this a lot, you know, we demand our freedom. Don't tell me what to do. When Mayor Bloomberg wanted to get rid of the big sodas. These. Except she has in here something called Brain Boost on the Go, which is healthy for you. You know, there was this outcry that he's, you know, trying to take away our freedom. But when you really think about the concept of epigenetics, that what a mom and dad eat, even before they're pregnant, increase the risk of illness in their children for heart disease, cancer, weight problems, and diabetes, then really it's not just about you. Did you know when you have a baby girl, that baby girl is actually born with all the eggs she'll ever have, and she's carrying your potential grandchildren?
How's that for a guilt trip?
Think about that. So your habits matter. We're going to tell you a story about that in just a little bit. And then one thing maybe you can talk a little bit about is probiotics.
Well, probiotics are so important, and this is really fun. They're so important that, I mean, my daughter's been taking them actually now for years, because anyone who's taken a lot of antibiotics, or you're under a lot of stress, or you're not getting sleep, I mean, there's so many things that really affect the good bugs in your gut. Just to make it really simple, I think of them as good bugs, bad bugs, and you want the good bugs to really outnumber the bad bugs.
Like 85% to about 15%,
Right.
so they can control them.
Right. So anything that you're doing that has this negative impact, I think of them as running around with little white hats and black hats. So you want the guys, the good guys, to really be winning this battle. And if they're not, anything you're doing that negatively impacts those good bacteria, the good bugs, then what's happening is those bad bugs are starting to overpopulate and take up real estate. And you don't want that to happen. You want those good bugs competing and taking up more of that real estate in your gut. So, and the reason this is so important, when I first told my daughter that she had bugs in her tummy, she was like, what? I mean, you can imagine a 10-year-old. She's like, that's really gross. And then explained why it was so important and that she needed to treat them like pets. We're going to take care of them. We're going to treat them like pets. And so she ended up naming them Lacey and Biff. And so this is really important. We sort of like taking care of them, taking probiotics. We're feeding them now. So, and this is important because did you know that your gut is considered your second brain, which is really interesting. It's called the second brain because it actually produces more neurotransmitters than your brain does. So when you do things that really disrupt your gut function, you are really priming yourself for things like depression and, you know, autoimmune diseases, but really
Anxiety,
mood disorders,
memory
anxiety,
problems.
right? All these different issues. So there really is this huge food-mood connection. It's very important. And probiotics.
So what are the things that can wipe out the good bugs?
Well, besides
in
the
your gut?
antibiotics.
So antibiotics.
stress.
So if you had a lot of ear infections when you were a child, or your children had a lot of ear infections, and they got a lot of antibiotics, and nobody replaced. So antibiotics, they're killing bacteria, and then nobody's replacing
And this is even if
the
when
good
you were a kid.
bacteria. What can happen is the flora, or the bugs in your gut, become unbalanced, and then kids can suffer with attentional problems.
And if you
they
just-
can suffer with anxiety, they can suffer with
But even if you just
depression.
go on living your life, but you never bothered not only replacing them, but living an unhealthy lifestyle, you just continue making it worse. It's not like they just eventually replace themselves. So unless you're doing the right things. So now, but stress is another big, big problem for wiping out
So stress
your good bugs.
feeds the bad bugs,
Right.
and kills the good bugs.
And then another issue is when you are eating a diet that really causes something that we call leaky gut. So when you loosen any foods that really irritate the intestinal lining and loosen those, you have tight junctions. You loosen those junctions, and then things start to, I'm a nurse, so you got to get over it. Get over body fluids. I got over it in Body Fluids 101. So your poop starts to leak out, okay? So, so for lack of a
But it
better term.
leaks into your body.
Goes into your body. So now your body starts to really react because it's getting, when proteins don't break down to their simplest form, or carbohydrates don't break down to their simplest form, and things start coming out that are not recognizable by your body, they're not being used the way that they're supposed to be used, your body's like, whoa, what is that? And it starts to react. And what happens when that happens? It's like an allergic reaction. Only now you're getting an autoimmune type reaction because it starts to attack itself.
So pain.
Chronic pain, thyroid
Rashes.
problems, rashes, psoriasis, so you start to get all these issues. But that's also affecting the good bugs and bad bugs. So you're just ripping up your gut. Advil, like overuse of non-steroidal inflammatories, you know, like the
So ibuprofen,
NSAIDs,
Motrin.
right. Like if you're overusing those that are anything that really is upsetting that lining.
So epigenetics is the concept I was talking about, that your habits turn on or off certain genes and make illnesses more or less likely in you, but ultimately in generations of you. So I really take this seriously for myself, and I want you to take it seriously as well. Your health is not just about you.
Right.
It's about your children and even your grandchildren. It's one of the most interesting, exciting, frightening advances in genetic medicine in the last 15, 20 years.
But hopefully it will make you more thoughtful.
You know, people often say, one of the little lies we'll talk about is, well, I'm fat because my family's fat. And it's like, no, my family's fat, and I'm not. because I don't engage in the same behaviors. I took the genetic test. I have a 67% chance of being obese, but I'm not. Your habits turn on or off the genes that make illnesses more or less
And I mean,
likely.
technically, I mean, on both sides of my family, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, and cancer. So, you know, how you live your life, your genetics definitely load the gun. It's about 20%. But how you live your lifestyle determines whether or not you pull the trigger. And for some of you, I thought that was really exciting because it means I have about 80% chance of controlling some of those outcomes, controlling the outcome. And for some of y'all, it's like suicide. Now, and I'm saying that intentionally to get your attention because you have a lot of control, but you're not exerting that control. It's not too late to turn it around. You can turn it around at any time you want, but you have to exert that control. And you know, one thing I want to really point out, because I get a lot of people on my Facebook page writing to me and they're like, oh, I read your book, I want to be just like you, I'm going off of all my medication. This is not about striving for that perfection of like, you know, we're not telling you this is an anti-medication program. I'm not sitting up here saying that like my life is perfect, I'm off of it. In fact, I will take medication for the rest of my life. I'm not anti-medication. I'm grateful for the stuff that keeps me optimizing my life and rocking my mission. That should be your goal. That we're not telling you to go off of anything, especially not without medical advice. We're trying to teach you a lifestyle program that hopefully you'll at least get off of some of your medications, if not all of them. And if not,
Well, that's
you'll
what we
feel
found
better.
with the Daniel Plan. So talk about the idea of epigenetics and Alicia.
So Alicia, I don't know if she's here. Some of you may know her. She attends here at Saddleback. And Alicia had actually been doing the Daniel Plan. And she was doing pretty well. She had lost some weight. And she was, I think she had lost like 25 or 30 pounds. And she ended up attending one of my first groups. And she's an amazing woman. And if any of you know Alicia, she is like super mom. So she really values and prides herself on being this amazing mother. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but that means that she wanted to give her kids treats for everything they did right. I mean, like, not kidding. So if they got good grades, anything they did, they had to get a treat for. Anybody relate to that? I hear the snickering. So nobody wants to show hands, but I'm hearing the snickering. So that was Alicia. So she had lost about 25 or 30 pounds, but she started to yo-yo and struggle after that. And so she had the principles, but what we realized when she started attending my group, right away we realized it was her mindset that was holding her back. Her mindset, which we find a lot, it's the psychology, the mindset that starts to trip people up. And they don't realize what's going on. So what we figured out very quickly was that Alicia's idea that she needed to treat her kids for everything they did was holding her back. She had this idea, I want to be healthy, but I'm going to be a bad mom if I do. I won't be able to give my kids treats. And she was going back and forth with this. And once we got that out of the way, because the truth was that as Alicia had gotten unhealthy and she was giving her kids treats for everything, all of her kids were getting unhealthy too. They were all overweight. And so they were only elementary school aged. So once we finally did some work around that mindset she had, oh my gosh, Alicia just took off. She was so happy. She lost 70 pounds. She was on fire. Her family became healthy. Her kids, she was exercising with her kids. She was amazing. She was just like glowing and just this amazing mom. And she wrote me this testimonial that said, you know, I've had this long-term committed relationship with sugar, which was one of the reasons that she was really doing it. That was the little lie she was like really planting. And she said, now I realize that the best treat that I can give myself and my family is to teach them about health and be healthy. So that was really the mindset piece she had to get right. And it was just so exciting to see. And she was just in tears for like 2 weeks in class. She was just, you know, figuring this out. It was so cool.
So, anybody ready to make a commitment to change? It's not about you. All right, so here are the things to do. Know your important numbers. These are the numbers we want you to know. We want you to know what your BMI is, your body mass index. It's a list of your weight according to your height. Normal's between 18.5 and 25. Overweight is 25 to 30. Obese is from 30 to 40. And morbidly obese is over 40. I have a brother who's 150 pounds overweight, and I went, your BMI is 42. And he looked at me and he said, you're cruel. And I said, I'm just honest, and I love you. You have to work on this thing. What's even better than BMI is waist to height ratio.
Yeah, BMI is
So
not.
it's measure your waist size at your belly button should be half your height in inches.
Right.
So I'm 5'6", that's 66 inches. That means my waist should be 33 inches or less. Now, don't go by your pant size.
So, but I just want to point out, BMI, a lot of people are going by BMI, but BMI is not very accurate for people who are really fit, like really muscular
NFL players.
right. So that it's not a very accurate
But for most
measurement.
people, it's pretty good.
If you're average
But
or-
waist to height ratio is the best. But you have to get a tape measure and put it around your waist, because a lot of guys in particular, in particular the pregnant ones, has anybody else bothered by that besides me? All the pregnant men, go to South Coast Plaza, and it's like, dude, deliver the baby. It's like, come on.
You're like, okay, you're going to that place. You're starting to go to that place. And now I'm close enough to hit you, so.
But their belt is like underneath the fat, right? And I'm 32.
Okay, sometimes I'm out there and I can't like smack him, so.
We want to know the number of hours you sleep, your blood pressure. It's very important. Even if your blood pressure is high normal, it's associated with brain atrophy. Your CBC, that's a complete blood count, because if it's low, you're going to feel anxious all the time. Your cholesterol levels, but this is very important. We don't want them to be too low. Under 160, total cholesterol is associated with depression, suicide, and homicide. Cholesterol is not the enemy. So you have to get it fractionated. We talk about that in our books.
Yeah, that's been such a misconception.
Vitamin D is critical. 2/3 of the United States is low in vitamin D. And even though we live in California, vitamin D is the sun hormone. Most of you are not walking out in the sun all day long. You're inside working. And when vitamin D levels go low, the hormone leptin that tells you to stop eating stops working. Mm-hmm. And so you're just hungry all the time. As we've been mentioning,
And you get depressed, and you're at risk for diabetes and all sorts of crazy stuff.
fasting blood sugar, we like it about 85. Even high normals associated with brain atrophy. Something called hemoglobin A1C. What that is, your blood sugar over like the last 3 months. So a fasting blood sugar is good, but a better one is hemoglobin A1C, because what's my blood sugar been on average over the last 3 months? Thyroid is just critical. If your thyroid's low, the function in your brain is low. You're not going to make good decisions. But how would you know unless you measured it? And I think you should be getting these numbers yearly. CRP is a measure of inflammation. Ferritin is a measure of iron. And if you don't have enough iron, you're anemic. If you have too much iron, your body rusts. So high iron levels, high ferritin levels are associated with early death, which is interesting. Many doctors think that's one of the reasons women live longer than men, because they bleed, because they're always losing iron through menstruation. And for guys who have high iron levels, bloodletting. It's a great
Go
treatment.
donate blood.
Is go donate blood or get leeches and put them on you.
Really?
Testosterone is so important. It's the male hormone, right? Makes you virile.
For women.
But low testosterone levels for men or women are associated with memory problems, with mood problems, with motivation problems, and low libido. So if you have a low libido, don't go, oh, it's because I'm old or my husband's ugly. You need to go, something's not right, and fix it. Now, the way to fix low testosterone levels is not to just go take testosterone, because that'll actually turn off your body's ability to make it. The first thing to do is kill the sugar.
Kill sugar and do weightlifting.
Kill sugar, do weightlifting.
Yep.
And then DHEA is a prohormone, or a hormone that gets translated into other hormones, and it's important to measure. So these are important tests, blood tests, that I think everybody should have yearly. And when I see low vitamin D levels, mine was 17. Normal's between 30 and 100. And I'm like, how can it be 17? But
Yeah.
if you have a little bit darker skin, you actually need more sun or more vitamin D than most people.
And if you have issues with your gut or you have thyroid problems, you're going to naturally you probably have to take more vitamin D than most people. So those are, like, it will come back low. People will often say, but I'm taking a lot of vitamin D. Well, you may have to take more. So that's just, some
For
people do
me,
have to take
in
more.
order to have a high normal level, I have to take
Me
10,000
too.
units a day.
Every day.
Now, I don't recommend you do that. What I recommend
Check
is
it.
you get it tested. You get it tested, and then you start maybe with 5,000 units a day, and then you test it again in 6 weeks, because we don't want it to go too high, but you want it. And a lot of times you'll get blood tests, and the doctor will go, it's normal. What I want you to do is be a little more responsible. And I want you to go, what's the normal level? And where am I at in the class? Because personally, for me, I never wanted to be at the bottom of any of my classes. And I know a lot of doctors will go, oh, well, your level's 30, you're fine. It's like, I don't think that's fine. I either want to be in the middle range level or in the high level.
So I think of those numbers as when people say one size doesn't fit all for a program, this isn't a one size fits all program. And I want you to start thinking of it that way. This really is more of a personalized program, and this is the personalized part of it. Okay, but you have to do it. So this is how you're personalizing this program to you.
Along with this. So one of the things we do at the Amen Clinics is we look at people's brains. And what we realize, people who struggle with their mood or their attention or their weight, they don't all have the same brain. So we've actually, based on our imaging work, we type people. Is this a compulsive person where they can't stop thinking about food? It just goes over and over in their head. They usually have low levels of a neurotransmitter called serotonin. Or the opposite of that, are they impulsive? They don't think about it all the time, but as soon as they smell Cinnabon, they go get one. They have low levels of a chemical called dopamine. Or some people, they're both impulsive and compulsive. They have low levels of both. Other people are sad, other people are anxious. So I developed these types based on our imaging work, but a long time ago I realized, well, not everybody's going to come and get a scan. So we actually developed questionnaires to help you know, well, what's my type? Because the types will then lead to certain interventions, certain supplements to help your specific type. And so, again, if you text that number, we'll send you a questionnaire to help you know your type. Along with that, I think there's certain supplements everybody should take. I think you should all take a multiple vitamin. I think of it insurance to mind the gap, unless you have a perfect diet. And quite frankly, I know very few people who have perfect diets. I also think you should be taking omega-3 fatty acids. You should be taking fish oil. And if you're a vegetarian, I still think you should be taking fish oil, because there are no good vegan sources of the omega-3 fatty acids you need for your brain. I wish there were, but they're called EPA and DHA. There's some algae
They don't
forms
convert quite well
of
enough.
DHA, but it doesn't convert well. And people go, well, what about flax seeds? It doesn't convert well enough. Vitamin D, as I mentioned. And then if you're compulsive, you worry, you hold grudges, things don't go your way, you can't stop thinking about things. 5-HTP and saffron can be helpful. If you're more impulsive, green tea is just amazing. Or rhodiola. If you're both, then a combination of those. If you tend to be sad and you have pain issues, I'm a big fan of SAMe. And if you tend to be anxious, there's GABA. On our website, we have lots of supplements sort of geared toward your type. What I'm really excited about, because when I first started doing imaging, I thought, oh, psychiatric problems tend to be medical. That means I'm going to use more medicine. But I didn't really like what a lot of the medicines did to the brain, which is why I got interested in supplements. And just last year, Dan and I were lecturing, And this 22-year-old kid raised his hand and he said, Dr. Amen, you're not going to like this. I said, what? He said, I'm a mixed martial artist. I said, that's probably not good for your brain. And he was at our clinic because he had temper problems, he was depressed, he was impulsive, he had suicidal ideas. And so when we scanned him, which was the image on the left, and then I said, hey, you want to do an experiment? He said, what? I said, well, let me give you these supplements and let's scan you. I'd already studied them. So we have something called Brain Power Basics, multiple vitamin fish oil brain boost. And we had shown in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial after 2 months, they helped with memory and mood, processing. I mean, we really got great results. They boosted blood flow to their brain, but I didn't know how fast they worked. I said, will you come and let me give them to you, and then 2.5 hours later, we'll scan you. And he's like, sure. And this is his brain 2.5 hours later. So we're pretty excited that even simple things like supplements can optimize brain function.
You can't supplement your way out of a bad diet and a lack of exercise. But most of you, or most people, I don't know about most of you, most people are not doing everything that they can. Most of you do have some gaps in your diet that supplements can help to fill. So, we don't live in a bubble. So a lot of people are not getting enough sleep, or you're getting too much stress in your life. Those are the things that they can help with.
So let's talk about food, because time is going. Let's
Okay.
talk about food.
Let's do it.
10-day big brain detox.
So I just want to point out, these are actually Dr. Hyman's slides, and I'm going to use his slides tonight just to honor him. He is actually the creator, along with you, of the Daniel Plan. And he's one of my biggest mentors. So I just really want to use his slides and honor him with these.
All right.
So eliminate flour and sugar. Obviously, now when we say flour, when I say sugar, I'm actually referring to most of these foods. So that actually surprises some people. I want you to start thinking of things like white rice, white potatoes, bread, even wheat bread as
Pasta.
sugar. Pasta, because they quickly turn to sugar. So any food that quickly turns to sugar, things like bread, pretzels, crackers, cookies, candy, yogurt, sweetened yogurt especially, processed spaghetti sauce. Most of these things have sugar in them. Ketchup, salad dressings, fruit juice, soda, and sweetened drinks. But no artificial
We're
sweeteners
getting
either.
the murmuring. I heard the murmuring.
We are going to talk about replacements. People start going, oh my gosh, what am I? And as soon as I say bread, even wheat bread, there's always somebody that says, but Jesus ate bread. I get it every time. It's like more addictive than just about anything, and there's reasons for that. But Jesus ate bread.
But he had better self-control.
No, Monsanto did it.
And he
Well,
knew,
he did.
And he knew
Yes,
he was going to
did.
die early.
And Monsanto wasn't around 2,000 years ago. Okay? The bread that you know of today is not like the bread from 2,000 years ago. Okay? Our wheat isn't even like it was 40 years ago. Not even close.
Slide 2.
Eliminate processed foods. So high fructose corn syrup, trans fat, and MSG. These things are really bad.
And the problem with MSG, many
Your
people are
brain.
sensitive to it. It's not on the labels. The
No, it's hidden.
FDA, in their wisdom, decided that if it's under a certain amount, they didn't have to label it, or they could also label it as natural flavors.
I mean, that's
so when
one
you
of those
see
things-
natural flavors
And
on
not
a
just
label,
that.
you want to ask yourself, now what the heck does that
Now,
mean?
This is one of those things that, like, we literally can't. I could go an hour on this, and we can't right
You
now.
can't.
But I know. But we'll tell you how to get more information. It's hidden in lots of things.
Take a gluten and dairy break.
I know people hate this one too. I get lots of hate mail on these. No wheat, no
Oh,
barley.
no. I'm telling you, if you do it, these
Just give
are
us
the
10 days. Come on.
biggest testimonials from my clinic that we have like 4,000 patient visits a month. It's our biggest testimonials. If you just do what we say for 10 days. Now, this woman's gift is taking really healthy food and making it taste awesome. So before you get up and walk out in disgust, I'm going to give you the 10-day food plan, and it's awesome.
I know you guys have done like many things that are a whole heck of a lot harder than this. How many of you can do this for 10 days? Thank you.
Okay.
10 days. Think of 3 words: whole, real, and fresh. Okay?
So
Whole,
if you
real,
eat
and
something
fresh.
and it has one ingredient on the label, it's probably good for you. Anything with more than 5 ingredients, you should stay away from.
Right. Food is information. So food is information. And I like that idea. So I love this concept of nutrigenomics. The food you eat talks to your genes every single day. It's turning on genes or turning off genes. And this is really important because you're turning on health-promoting genes or you are turning on disease-promoting genes every day with the food you eat. So you want to be thinking about what message you want to send. So eat protein and fat at every meal, and there's a really important reason why. Okay, so you don't want to eat a lot of protein. Think of it like medicine, small amounts throughout the day, and a tiny bit of healthy fat along with that. And
Because fat helps you absorb your vitamins.
and that's not the only reason. So the fat, yes, that's true. I know.
It's not the only reason.
No. So fat and protein together actually help to reset the hormones of metabolism. They send the signal to your brain that tell you that you're full, that you've eaten, that you're satisfied.
But what about fat and sugar?
Does the opposite, especially if
Donuts.
it's processed fat, like trans fat and fried fat and all that stuff. Does the exact opposite. It actually thwarts that signal and presses on that pleasure button that makes you addicted. So that does the exact opposite. That actually tells your brain that you haven't eaten. It actually
So that's why
messes up those
when they
hormones
took
of
the donuts
metabolism.
out of Saddleback, that
They
Carrie
did? I heard they
got
don't-
hate mail.
Right.
It's like it's my constitutional
I know,
right.
I'm so excited to see you
have-
sitting here because I'm going to talk about that. You
It's my
guys have...
constitutional right to have donuts. It's like, yes, you can go down the store,
I
the
loved
street
when you said that.
to do that.
I like that.
So Carrie is in charge of food service here, and he's awesome. We love him.
You guys have some great resources here, some people who really know what they're doing, and Carrie is one of those people. So,
All right.
fat is not the enemy. Now, fried fat and trans fats, those are the enemy. Processed fats, those are the enemy. Healthy fat is not the enemy. So you want to think of things like olive oil, not for cooking with so much, but for eating on your salads. Now, if you're cooking at low temperatures, not so bad, but high temperatures, avoid it.
High temperature, cook with grapeseed oil or coconut oil.
Avocados, eggs, nuts, seeds, nut butters, excellent fats. They make you feel full, which is why when you do what we're telling you to do, you will not have cravings. But you got to do it this
It's the
way.
most exciting thing to live without cravings.
And you will feel
and
full
that
and
will
satisfied.
happen within the first 3 or 4 days. And 60% of the solid weight of your brain is fat. You should never be on a low-fat diet. It is not good for your brain.
No, and you need fat to burn fat, and that surprises people.
There is no suffering required or recommended. This program is about abundance and not deprivation. That's why it's critical to have the right mindset. Okay, the number one thing to do is get your mind right. In the Daniel Plan, we're always sharing verses with each other. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We're going to visit that one again in a minute. One of my favorites from Philippians, Philippians 4:8. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Where you bring your attention determines how you feel. So if you're focused on, I can't eat that, I hate that, I feel terrible that I can't do that, this will never work for you. But if you focus on energy and memory and health and meaning and purpose and what your life is like with a good
Right,
brain.
what's your mission?
This is a piece of cake.
Yeah, and
Not cake. No, I said that wrong. This
all
is
that
a
work
piece
just went out the window.
of a goji berry truffle that you make.
Like, really? What am I going to do with you? Or if you're like me, it's
Anything
like,
you want.
you know, this is so important. It's like, I am not going back. I have so much work to do, but I can't do that work if this is so important. I'm not going back if I have anything to do with it. Not, maybe God has different plans for me, but I got to do my part.
And so one of the first things is to get rid of the ants in your head. So those of you who heard me speak, I've been talking about this for many years. It stands for automatic negative thoughts. And you have many of them. And they're crawling around infesting your mind. And if you had a lot of them and your partner has a lot of them, they mate with each other. And now you have super ants that ruin the relationship.
So I'm not immune to this, and I can actually, I'm a little OCD about some things. And so I, over the weekend, had this little incident with my foot, and made me very unhappy because I'm so busy, and I have all these big speaking events coming up, and our own big event coming up in June. For 3 days, I have to be on my feet, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. I mean, the first thing that happened was this can't be happening. And the second thought in my head is, oh my gosh, I can't exercise. Like for me, that's like my medicine, and I'm not gonna be able to exercise, I'm not gonna be able to work out, and I started to freak out. And my husband's first words out of his mouth, which he's my rock, but sometimes when he does this, it really irritates me. It's all gonna be okay, honey. Really? So that was not the thought in my head. So it started to irritate me, and I started to go down this road. And then I thought, that's not true. I can exercise because I've been doing this long enough now. And after having cancer 3 times and having to make comebacks and having lots of issues with my health, not just that, like a laundry list, I've had to make a lot of comebacks, and I've become a warrior for my health. And that's something we want you to start thinking about. We want you to be warriors for your health. And that is, I'm not kidding about this. So my next thought, I stopped myself pretty quickly. Next day, I worked out, but not on my foot. Okay? So, because people do this to me all the time. I can't work out because I have X, I have Y, I have Z, I've got... So, the next thing I did was I created a workout for myself. I can do pull-ups. I can do my arms, I can do my shoulders, I can do all kinds of things. I just can't do anything on this foot, right? So you need to stop that thinking and stop going down that road.
So look at what's possible
Stop
rather
looking at
than
what's not possible.
Impossible. So here's the exercise we want for you. Part of the Daniel Plan and part of what I do with all of my patients is I have them journal. And I want you to keep a journal every day. And whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, I want you to write down what you're thinking. And then I want you to subject it to logic. God gave you a big brain for a reason. I want you to ask yourself, are the thoughts true? I can't exercise. I'm going to be unhappy.
Neurotic.
I'm out of control. I want you to be able to talk back to the nonsense in your own head. So powerful. Don't believe every stupid thing you think. We teach second graders how to do it. It's powerful. It's not hard. So, for example, the little lies that drive failure. I don't want to deprive myself. But doesn't eating bad food deprive you of your health, which is your most precious resource?
And your mission.
Pastor Warren says if you had $1 million racehorse, would you ever feed it junk food? Only if you were an idiot. But aren't you worth more? Why would you ever eat junk food? It's a thought, right? Oh, because I love it. It's like, now how did junk food get into the same part of your brain as your wife or as your grandchildren? You need to begin to disconnect some of the stupidity going on in there. I can't eat healthy because I travel.
Oh my gosh, we travel so much, it's not even funny. So you just have to have a plan.
And a little forethought. God gave you a big brain for a reason. My whole family's overweight. It's in my genes. Your grandmother was morbidly obese.
And you have many people in your family.
So it's a big lie. Genes only account for about 20 to 30% of your health. Right. The vast majority of health problems are driven by the bad decisions you make. I can't afford to get healthy. Being sick is always more expensive than getting healthy.
Okay, I don't know how many of you have had this experience. Being sick is the most expensive thing. Okay? And I'm not just talking about medical bills. I'm talking about dropping out of school, lost time at work, lost productivity, just feeling awful. It's just not worth it. It's the most expensive thing.
And your assistant was able to feed a family of 3 on $80 a week with amazingly healthy food. Again, it's a mindset.
It's a choice.
It's really not about money.
And I know y'all, like, when I really work with people on this, it's like, make me a list of the things you do in a day or in a week. I want to see your budget and if you're really serious about it. And we can work with it. And I have lots of budgeting tips. I created a video with Thomas from the Salvation Army. I actually planted this program there, and they had to do it on a, like, not kidding, rock bottom budget. So if we can do it with them, we can do it pretty much anywhere. And I took him shopping and taught him how to do it as a gift to him when he got out of the program, because he was so afraid.
He's coming up. I can't find the time to work out.
Right.
But with a sharper mind, it'll actually save time if you do work out.
And I don't have time not to.
Treat a lot of CEOs. And I always like, you need to go make an appointment regularly to do that because you'll be more effective at work.
So now you see how nervous I get about the idea of not being able to work out? Because I'm so busy. If I don't work out, I know I'm not going to be as productive. For me, it's not an option. I know I won't feel as well. So you just have to start to shift that mindset.
And so many people, even some here at Saddleback, well, it's Easter. Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. There is always an excuse to hurt yourself. And I have been railing against this. We actually started our first weight loss group December 1st. And we called it Lose Weight Through the Holidays. In the week of Christmas, the average weight loss was 2.5 pounds. I love that. Why are we celebrating Christ's birth or my birth with bad food? When I turned 50, two different people brought me cakes, and I just looked at them like, you don't want me to be 52. That is not a sign of love. Now, you might think it's a sign of love, but when you really use the big brain God gave you, you're like, oh, I'm celebrating by making him sick. Think about that. There are other ways to celebrate. And fortunately for me, I have one beautiful wife who knows how to take really healthy food, make it taste awesome. And if you've done the Lazarus thing to your taste buds, that you've brought the dead back to life, then an orange, when you bite into it, explodes with flavor.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, stress is a huge issue. We have a whole list of things that help you with that. The most important thing is you know why you're on the planet. So you have a purpose-driven life. So what is your sense of meaning and purpose? Prayer, meditation. We actually did imaging studies and found both of those boost blood flow to the most human, thoughtful part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex.
It actually changes, like, your brain. It's
As
interesting.
does gratitude. Where you bring your attention determines how you feel. Killing the ants, breathing, we'll talk about it but we talk about small groups and how important they are. People who share their challenges in a small group, it lowers their cortisol levels. They feel less
That's why women survive
stressed.
cancer more than men do.
It's true, because they talk more. To each other. So we actually did this study looking at gratitude. So focusing on what you love about your life versus focusing on what you hate about your life. And what we found, focusing on what you hate about your life dropped some really important structures in your brain, like your frontal lobes or your temporal lobes, which are involved with memory, and even in the coordination centers in your brain in the back. So focusing on negativity makes you less coordinated and also not quite that smart. And the best way to reduce stress in your life is to stop messing up. So how do you do that? This is how you make better decisions. You plant these 2 words in your head, then what? If I do this, then what happens? If I say this, then what happens? You make sure you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You really kill the alcohol. Vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids. Avoid trigger foods, especially wheat and dairy. and you make sure your blood sugar is stable. So one tip, I know if I go over to my mom's house at a holiday, she's masterful at making these pizzas that taste amazing. But it's really not the amazing taste. They remind me of her love. And I used to, before I really got serious about being healthy, I wouldn't eat all day.
Yep.
And then I go over there and eat 10 slices and feel completely sick. And I realized that's not my goal. So I actually eat before I go, so I have a good blood sugar, so that maybe if I have a slice, I feel loved, and I'm like totally good with that. So it just takes planning of knowing what your vulnerable moments are, and always keeping my blood sugar stable. Always keep my blood sugar stable.
And now, if you really want to be an advocate and you really want to go the extra mile and be a warrior, take a Daniel Plan approved meal with you. So that gives
and a book.
The hostess the heads up that you eat
and
a
the cookbook
different, gives you something to eat,
awesome.
And you're spreading the message, right? So it's really interesting. And people are going to ask, they want to know if they're going to have wine, because it's just the two big questions: coffee and wine. How much is safe to have?
So, with wine, 2 normal-sized glasses a week. I would just limit it there. People who drink every day have smaller brains. And when it comes to your brain, size matters.
Because if you're going to socialize, you guys want to know how much, let's just put it out there.
And caffeine, if you have a cup of coffee a day, now that is a small cup of coffee at Starbucks. That's like not a big deal. And usually it's the stuff you put in it.
Right, it's the stuff you put in it. So here's my trick. So I do half-calf coffee in the morning, and I cut it with almond milk. So now I get a quarter calf.
Unsweetened
Unsweetened,
almond milk
so I do
with
half
stevia.
So it's half-calf coffee with almond milk. So it's an almond milk latte. It ends up being quarter calf coffee. If I want to have 2 of them, then it's not a big deal. I end up with a half cup of coffee, basically. And so it's like a comfort thing. That's really the purpose of it, right? So or you can do total decaf, or you can use green chai tea. And you have, because there's actually some great benefits to coffee. It's got a ton of antioxidants.
So it's one of the things I have in the afternoon. So I'll have green chai tea so I'll put half of unsweetened almond milk, green chai tea, heat it up, put a little chocolate flavored stevia. There's a company called Sweet Leaf that I like. They make 9 different flavors of stevia. So no calories. Stevia is one of the sweeteners we really like. They've been shown to have some health benefits. And it sort of gets my sweet tooth.
Right. And it's a treat. It's comfort food.
All right, so let me talk to you about blood sugar. This is a brand new study that's just, I think, hysterical. So the researchers took 107 married couples, and right before bed, they measured their blood sugar levels, and they gave them voodoo dolls. And they said, I want you to express...
Are you really talking about voodoo in church?
No, I'm talking about the dolls. This is science.
I see. Just making sure.
So they gave them voodoo dolls, and they said, we want you to express your feelings about your partner with the pins and the dolls.
I want a voodoo doll.
But what I thought was really interesting is people who had the lowest blood sugar had the most pins in the doll. And I know if I don't feed you...
Oh my, and that one. Oh my gosh.
It's not good. So if you want to have a good marriage, feed Daniel Plan approved foods throughout the day. This is so important.
Crime is associated with low blood sugar.
Managing your blood sugar level, which means protein at each meal, is absolutely critical for your thinking and for your long-term love. And divorce is really hard, as many of you know. It's hard, it's expensive, and it can make you sick. So I'm going to feed you, honey. One more thing before we get to the 10-day plan is your attitude toward failure. There is no failing on this plan. There is no failing. Because you can always do a U-turn. You know, if you're in a car and you make the wrong turn, the car does not start swearing at you. Although I always thought I wanted to make an app that would swear at people.
Sometimes.
Because people do that to themselves. What does it say? Make the next legal U-turn. And what we want you to do is be the scientist and the subject. is we want you to start observing your behavior and get curious.
Really-
Every patient I see, I have a whiteboard in my office, and I draw this for them. I said, people come to see me, and they're not doing good. They're at the bottom. And, they have good days and bad days, but they're generally not good. And then we intervene, and they get better. That's why we've been in business for a long time. But nobody just gets better. It's this pattern, up, down, up, down. And it's the downs where you had a bad day, where if you get curious about the bad day and you go, what happened? I didn't sleep. I believed every stupid thought I had. I forgot to eat. That's where you learn.
Right.
So that you protect yourself against the down days. And then pretty
These
soon
are the most
you
important.
see.
That's the most important part, are those down days.
Is
It's where
learning.
we learn the most about what's going on with people.
Okay.
So I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. You don't want to be focused on those up days. That doesn't really tell you anything.
And what do you say? Perfection is?
It's an excuse to fail. It's an excuse to pick up your toys and go home. Every time you don't do it perfectly, you quit. It's not a good excuse.
Okay, 10 days. Here we go. You ready? Day 1. Start the day with prayer and meditation. So, some of my favorite Bible verses. Put off your old self, which belongs to your former life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds to put on your new self. That's what I want you to do. Make a commitment, put on your new self. So, day 1, download the brain type test. Get your important numbers scheduled. Call your doctor. There are actually websites you can order them yourself. Schedule your exercise for the next 10 days. And we want you to start keeping a journal. And in that journal, I want you to rate your mood, energy, focus, and self-control on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is bad, 10 is good. So it's a really simple day, and pick a buddy. Buy a copy of the Daniel Plan for them, and we'll go, let's do this together. It's the cheapest group process that you can do. And we have a 6-week Daniel Plan curriculum. We have Daniel Plan journals. And so here's the food. Here is an example of the food. I start every day with a protein shake. I started it today, and so what do? I get ice. Half a cup of frozen blueberries, kale, spinach, protein powder. Now, make sure the protein powder is clean. There's not a lot of bad things in it. And we have one on our website that we really like, but there are a lot of good protein powders. I put in Green Vibrance. That is
we've got all the
loaded.
recipes for you guys. I mean, there's a ton of recipes.
And then I put a little stevia in it. That's it. It's
Right.
250 calories. I know the calories because to me, calories are like money. If you overeat, if you overspend, you get bankrupt. If you overeat them, you're going to get fat.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I'm thinking about it, so I bring things with me to work. Chopped up veggies, and some days it'll be mashed avocado with a little bit of garlic in it, and that's sort of my morning snack.
We tend to be creatures of habit because to make it really easy, so we have routine. And for most
routine
people,
is good.
Right. For most
Find
people,
20
routine is
things
good.
you love and just stick with them.
Right.
As long as they're healthy. And then for lunch, I'll often have a salad with protein on it. And one little tip, I like vinegar and oil dressing. I like red wine vinegar. Never put the oil on first. If you put the oil on first, you'll use 3 times the amount of oil as if you drench it in vinegar. So put as much as you want of the vinegar because it's got virtually no calories. And then you just put a little oil on. Because oil, a teaspoon of oil is 100 calories.
Here's one of my tips. Get some to go the little tiny disposable containers. Get a whole bunch of them. Just one time. Measure once, not 30 times. Mark it with a Sharpie what a tablespoon is. Then you never have to measure again. You're done.
It's so important. Portion control matters. And then in the afternoon, I'll usually, often have an apple and a quarter cup of nuts, but I'll measure it. Or what I really like, I like the 100-calorie snack packs. Because I know, if it's just there's a big jar of nuts, forget it. My brain totally will lie to me. You had a handful. No, you didn't. You're old, you have memory problems. Have another one. And then Tana has an amazing rosemary chicken recipe, and she's got a chocolate mousse that's out of this world.
Yeah, and the chocolate mousse, these desserts, you can actually have them like all the time.
So what's in
really
the chocolate mousse?
You can either make it with fresh coconut, you can make them with, there's simple recipes you can use to make these. Like you can use, there's a couple of options. You can use coconut, you can use tofu, like a fresh, like organic tofu. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. We've got the recipes on the website.
You'll be surprised at how good they taste.
Yeah, they're simple.
And Tana always says, replace, don't erase.
So think of this so you don't get that deprivation mindset. We want you to replace, not erase. So we always want you thinking of replacements, and we have so many replacements for everything we take away. So avocados for cheese and butter, almond and coconut milk for dairy, salsa for ketchup, hummus for mayonnaise, lettuce wraps for bread, and we've got other wraps. So lettuce wraps are obviously the least expensive, they're easy, but there's coconut wraps, there's persimmon wraps, which my daughter loves and her friends love. There's all these different wraps that are amazing. So, and use those in place of tortillas or bread.
All right, so day 2. Start the day with prayer and meditation. The fleeting pleasures of sin. I love that. The fleeting pleasures of sin. And what I talk with my patients a lot about is short-term pain or long-term pain. Right? Short-term pain, I'm really hungry, I want to grab something quick because I didn't plan, versus, I'm not going to be on this program very long. And then we want you to clean out and restock your kitchen. There's actually on the Daniel Plan website a video of Tana and I cleaning out someone's kitchen. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
This woman told us she was healthy, and then I'm holding the box of Captain Crunch, and I'm like, help me with this. And she's like, oh, that's the only thing my son will eat. And in my head, because I'm a psychiatrist, I'm thinking, oh, her poor son has autism, and he has that, rigid mind. Then he walks by, he's like 6'4", he's a swimmer. I'm like,
He's
if
like
you
17.
didn't have this in the house, he would die. So it's these little lies people say. And when you clean out your kitchen, do not give the bad quality food to the poor. I have such a problem with the food bank. Now, not ours, but there's so many people, they give the food away that's going to kill people early. Calorie restriction is associated with longevity.
That's hysterical.
Giving people processed food is only going to make them sicker.
Right.
And then, of course, the things we do every day: exercise, journaling, supplements, connect with your buddy. Another day, protein shake, maybe hummus and veggies, turkey, avocado, wrap. The persimmon wrap is awesome.
They're really good.
They're really awesome. And snacks, I make something called Brain in Love. My grandfather, as I told you, was a candy maker. But I figured out how to make healthy chocolate.
We have some for you.
We have a treat for you.
You go by our table.
At the table. 140 calories, so maybe that and a few nuts. And then I love soup at night. So Tana has a recipe called Healing Chicken Soup. 3, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you in a new person by changing the way you think. It's another version of Romans 12:2. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world. And what's different on day 3 is imagine a detailed future of failure and success. So talk about this story.
This is one of my favorite stories. So we did our plan at the Salvation Army. And it was...
So we planted this plan into one of the largest drug treatment programs in Southern California. And they didn't have much money. And these are court-ordered, many of them, drug addicts trying to recover.
Many of them are coming from prison. And so many of them have been in prison. They're court-ordered to be here for up to a year. And Thomas was one of them. That was a pretty tough story. And so he had a background. He'd made some really bad choices, let's put it that way. So when he came into the program, he came in saying that he was not only overweight, but he was depressed, foggy, gloomy, and felt that he had no future. He was depressed and just felt that he had no future. He had failed his GED several times and felt that he was stupid. And after a few days, he started to feel better, but after a few weeks, he really started to get it, and he felt amazing, and he started exercising, first 20 minutes a day, then then like an hour and a half a day, and he felt just amazing. He lost 85 pounds. He passed his GED, and not only, the main thing for him was getting God in his life, but then he said what he really didn't anticipate was that the food was really going to be so important to him. He could not believe that the food made a radical difference to him. And when he ate right, his mind was clear. And when he didn't eat right, his mind was not clear, and he made bad decisions. And it was such a transformation for him. So I took him shopping, and it was such a cool story. And he was so afraid of losing his grip on eating healthy when he got out of the program, because there it's structured. So that was my gift to him when he got out. And he was going down the aisles, and he was really, enjoying this, and he's a funny guy, and he's really getting into it. But he made one slip up when we were going down one of the aisles, and he was pointing out to the chips, and he said, sometimes it's hard, and I went, wait, stop. I want to think about that. Since you're not in the group, you don't have that structure anymore, I want you to think about that thought. Is it hard? Is it true? Is it true that it's hard to give up the chips? I said, you just got done saying that the food made the biggest difference in your decision making and everything, the choices that you're making. You lost 85 pounds. So help me out with this. You lost 85 pounds and you passed your GED. You're now not in prison. You're like getting a job. Your life is back in order. You're doing all these amazing things. Or prison, losing your kids, losing your family, being drug addicted, being in a drug rehab He's like, no, it's not hard. I'm like, you have to, that's that mindset. That's correcting those thoughts. It's just really
It's so important. The quality of your thoughts matter. So I want you to imagine a future of failure. If you keep doing the same thing that you're doing now, what will your life be 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now?
Right.
Or
chips
if you
or
do
success. Chips or success.
the right things, what will your life be like 10 days from now?
It's like, which is harder? Come on, people.
Okay, so day 3, so you can have a protein shake, or Tana has a recipe called Tanana pancakes that our 2-year-old grandson Liam just loves.
No, I'm having a shake every day, but let's be real. We are busy people. We do like really simple stuff, but we're showing you some of the options. And these pancakes, Chloe eats them all the time. They are so easy. They're like 5 minutes. This doesn't require batter. This is like 5 ingredients. It's super easy. You put it in a blender and you're like ready to go. So, and there's no batter in it. It's eggs, coconut oil, banana. It's like super easy. So it's a protein-based pancake. And it's blended up strawberries as
and
a sauce.
A lot of these recipes are in the Daniel Plan cookbook. So in the snack in the afternoon, there's something called Cocoa Banana Delight that just tastes awesome. Or one of my favorite dinners is a barbecue chicken salad. Day 4. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 1 is one of my favorite chapters, and it's really where I understand what fear of the Lord means. And I think that means appropriate anxiety. You want to be afraid. I used to think my job as a psychiatrist was to chill everybody out. 30 years later, it's totally not my job. A lot of my patients, they need me to ramp up their anxiety so that they make good decisions. The don't worry, be happy people die the earliest from accidents or preventable illnesses. It's another reason why women live longer. They have a lot more anxiety than men do, and that's why they go to jail 14 times less than men. So do the right things, and let me give you some appropriate anxiety. Alzheimer's disease starts in your brain 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms. This is what an Alzheimer's brain looks like. This is a 59-year-old woman. They just recently revised the staging guidelines. It used to be your normal senior moments Alzheimer's disease, but based on imaging work like what we do at Amen Clinics, the new guideline is you're not having any symptoms, but your brain's deteriorating. 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms. Those of you that are waiting to get sick until you get healthy, which is not the sign of intelligent life, you might want to begin to rethink that. So here's Todd. He's the chief people officer at Franklin Covey, 53. He's interviewing me. terrible memory. He thinks it's normal. And I'm like, do you exercise? He's a marathoner. I'm actually not a fan of marathon because it's too much stress. And I'm like, well, what do you have for breakfast? And then he looks down. He's not going to look at me. He's looking down. Pop-Tarts and a Diet Coke. I'm like, what? This is like a senior management person at this great consulting. And after I got through with him, he says, I haunt him at every meal. And I'm totally happy to haunt you at every meal so that you do the right thing, so that you can do your purpose, why God put you on this earth. So I'm going to give you the short course really quickly on how to prevent Alzheimer's disease. You prevent all the risk factors associated with Alzheimer's. Now, if it's genetic, you have a higher risk. That means you should get more serious. So brain injuries, so you should be wearing your seatbelt, not jumping out of airplanes. Alcohol abuse, cardiovascular disease. How do you prevent cardiovascular disease? It's called the Daniel Plan, diet and exercise. Faith, focus, friends. If you exercise less than twice a week, you can prevent that risk right today. Start exercising 3 times a week. If you drop out of school, you have a higher risk. That means you should always be engaged in lifelong learning. If you have low vitamin D, omega-3, high CRP, the Daniel Plan helps take care of that. If you're pre-diabetic, it increases your risk, which means you got to do this program. Do the elimination diet and stay on it. Periodontal disease, which means you really should be flossing. Stop smoking, get ADD and depression treated. If you have cancer treatment, you have a higher risk of Alzheimer's. That's really unfair. But all of us should be on a cancer prevention diet, which means 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I had 3 of them in my shake this morning. Kale, spinach,
you got to
and
start
blueberries.
with breakfast. You're not going to do it unless you start with breakfast.
And these other things as well. So day 4. Notice there's a pattern here, but one of my favorite things was grilled halibut with pesto sauce and veggies.
So,
It's
like I
awesome.
said, we are creatures of habit. So breakfast is going to be usually a protein shake, maybe some eggs or an omelet or something like that, something simple. But the snacks and things for us during the day, it's usually a salad or it's leftovers. Frankly, that's what it's going to be because we're busy. We're giving you some cool options just to show you how cool it can be. But we're creatures of habit because we're busy. But then dinner for us is what's special. So that's usually where we have a cool meal. But then that's what we use
All right.
for leftovers for lunch.
So let's get to 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control is the fruit of the Spirit. So what I want you to do on day 5 is I really want you to start measuring things. I want you to weigh and measure things. The epiphany for me was grape nuts. So I used to like grape nuts. And I went and I'd look at the box, and the box would say, 1 serving is 220 calories. And on the milk, it said 1 serving was 80 calories. So I'm like, I'm having a 300-calorie breakfast. I can do that. And then I forgot the little detail.
Right.
That 220 calories was for half a cup. Because I would just get whatever bowl size I felt like, fill it up, fill up the milk. And then, so I got a half a cup out, got the grape, put it in the bowl, and I started to cry. Because I realized I was having 800,000 calorie
But
breakfast.
if you have one of
which
our
was great.
big smoothies, that's the same as that little bowl of grape nuts. So, and we have this little ongoing controversy about measuring, like counting calories. I am not going to count like calories over and over and over again because it's just like not how I'm built. I don't know how many of you feel that way. So like, what I do is what I told y'all to do. I got a whole bunch of like containers, marked them all. Like I did it all one time. I measured once, not 30 times. So I know how much those things are. I'm still counting them. I'm still doing that measuring, but I'm doing it in portion controls because I've done it once. So I mark all my containers so I know how many calories are in those sizes.
But if you're
I've
having
done it
trouble
once.
losing weight, at least for a month. Now, we don't really agree on this, and Dr. Hyman and I fought bitterly about
But
it.
I know how much the calories are because I've marked it.
If you're
I've done
having
it
trouble
once.
losing weight, for a month, count everything you put in your body. Because what you're going to find is you've been lying to yourself. Weigh things, measure things.
But I'm not saying
and it'll
don't do it.
make
I'm
a
saying do it in
radical
advance.
difference. But calories, it's not just about calories, right? I mean, if you go on an 800 Twinkie diet, 800 calorie a day Twinkie
Yeah.
diet, you will lose weight and you will die
But
early.
no. You will lose weight initially and then you will gain it back. all food is not the same, and I'm not going to go into Bebek and Makolo, but you get to eat more food and lose weight if you eat the right foods.
No question.
These foods.
So the quality of your calories is the most important thing, but if you're having trouble, what I've seen is the nut thing, is that people will, get a big handful of nuts that's 500 calories, and they'll go, but I can't lose weight. And they'll give up on the plan, and I'm like, come on, God gave you a big brain for a reason. Calories are like money. Overspend, you get bankrupt.
Right.
Day 5, I love this crustless quiche. It just tastes awesome. Or one of my favorites is the citrus kale and chicken salad.
Even my 10-year-old loves that.
It's awesome.
Yeah, even kids like that one.
Day 6, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. I'm thinking about fast food companies. Or I'm thinking about the food pushers that you know. When my daughter had my first grandchild, someone over her house said, can I get you something to eat? And I said, no. And she said, are you sure? I said, I think so. And she asked me 6 times. And at the end of 6 times, I'm like, why do you want me to eat when I don't want to eat? Do not be a food pusher. If you're one of those people that feel like you have to love people by making them sick, you want to rethink that idea.
So and my little pet peeve with this is when we're talking about the food industry, when a clown with $1 billion bankroll can march into your living room at any time they want, I have a problem with this. They have more control over your kids in many cases than you do, right? The food industry does, through your television, through all this marketing, and they have all these meals that they have. So, I started to get creative, and I'm like, I can have my own fun meal. If anyone's going to bribe my kid, it's going to be me. So, and people are like, you bribe your kid with, yes.
She's a
you
capitalist.
Bet. Okay, so I started to create these fun associations with food and fun games and fun things. You want to do that yourself. Don't let the food industry do it. You do it yourself. Right? So we have all kinds of fun games.
So she actually takes Chloe on scavenger hunts. So she creates her own fun meals. Right. So talk about that just for a second.
So I'll take her to when we were first doing this and taking out all these things out of our house and putting in new things, took her to the local health food store, and I not only paid her to help me find healthy labels, but she had to read the labels, but I gave her a healthy snack while we were doing it. So she made this fun association to the store, and then she got paid to read these labels and help me find things, and that became her new sort of our thing we did together, and she still loves that store. So it's something, and now she not only that, but she cooks like crazy, really healthy things. So she's an amazing cook in the kitchen.
So you want to get your kids to buy in, you have to teach them to cook, which means you have to spend time with them. That's really what most kids crave. So day 6, there's this amazing power breakfast porridge that,
totally grainless.
Looks
completely
awesome.
Grainless.
What I often get for lunch when I'm sort of mixing things up is a stir fry. Is chicken or shrimp. And what I always say is very light sauce, no rice. Because that's...
So just think of things with no rice and, very
And
simple.
then this avocado gelato is just awesome. In fact,
stole that from Jenny
my
Ross.
daughter, so my first grandchild was a very fussy eater. And my daughter was over our house, and she was crying and, asking Tana what to do.
He was underweight.
What happened?
He dug into, I had it on the counter, and he just dug in and smeared it on his face. And this is the right kind of calories for kids. You don't tell them there's avocados in it. I have all the kids eating the stuff, and they don't know what they're eating because they'll freak out. And it's all good. I'm okay with that.
Day 7, the complacency of fools will destroy them. I don't want you to be complacent. I want you to read all the labels. The labels are there for a reason. Now, they're not perfect, but if there are things on the labels that your grandmother would not recognize as food, I wouldn't eat it. Did you know corn dogs have 29 ingredients?
Scary.
That's probably a bad thing. So what do I love? I love the almond milk lattes, shrimp kebabs, apple slices with almond butter. If you begin to look at these, there's no deprivation. 8, lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil. Everywhere you look, there's temptation. and there's somebody trying to make money off of your early death. So one of the things I like to do is I teach my patients diaphragmatic breathing. And in our 3-day event, we actually spend a lot of time working on this. Just take a minute, put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. And I want you just to feel yourself take 3 breaths. And see if you're more a chest breather or a belly breather. And whenever you feel anxious or out of control or you have a craving, what I want you to do is take 10 very slow, deep breaths and try to let the energy of breathing go lower in your body so that you use your belly.
Now,
It's
women
powerful.
often intentionally don't do belly breathing.
Right, because they're wearing clothes that are too tight
Or
for
because
them.
they don't want their stomach to stick out. Get over it. Okay? It's not good for you. It's not good for you to do the chest breathing. It's actually not good for you.
So if you ever watch a baby breathe or a puppy breathe, they breathe almost exclusively with their bellies. And Tana's Cipino is just awesome, awesome, awesome. So last 2 days, we have special stories. From Ecclesiastes, 2 people are better off than 1, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better. I want you to start talking about your new habits at work or at school. I want you to start giving them away. Marianne is one of my favorite stories. She's a member here at Saddleback. She's the Western Regional Director for Franklin Covey. And goodness, 5 years ago, she was depressed and overweight. She had chronic pain. She had brain fog, and she was thinking of quitting the job she loved because she knew she wasn't her best. And she was telling her daughter this. Her daughter's a special ed teacher who'd known about my books. And I had a new book out called Change Your Brain, Change Your Body. And Marianne got the book, and she just did everything I asked her to do. And within 2 months, the brain fog had lifted. A year later, she dropped 60 pounds. But what was really exciting about Marianne's story, she did it, then her husband did it. Then she brought it to work and began to transform the culture at her Franklin Covey office here in Irvine. And then in the larger Franklin Covey Corporation. And then her daughter, who was 140 pounds overweight, saw what her mother had and wanted it, and over the next 2 years dropped 140 pounds. So if you see what's happening, as she got it, she gave it away. And it is in the act of giving that she received.
Right.
We'll come back to that in just a minute. So if we look at day 9, one of my favorite salads is the salmon salad with pomegranates. It's just awesome. And as I show you all these pretty shakes, I mean, they really look like that, but they taste awesome. All right, day 10, we're going to do the food first. Tana has this great, amazing crepe recipe. You can have steak, but we want your meat. And it's more expensive, but you eat less of it, so it's the same cost. Hormone-free, antibiotic-free, free-range grass-fed. Now, antibiotic-free should make sense to you after our little discussion on the pets in your belly. Right? Because if you're eating foods fed antibiotics, they're killing the good bugs in your gut. We get more antibiotics from our food than from
By the
medication.
way, 70 to 80% of the antibiotics in this country are used on farm-raised or industrial-raised animals.
And why grass-fed? Why do farmers feed animals corn, soy, and potatoes?
To make them fat quickly.
To make them fat, and we have known that since the time of George Washington. We were in Washington, D.C., we were speaking together, and so we went to Mount Vernon, and there was a plaque that said, and this is like the 1800s, that said on his farm, right before they would fatten them, they'd feed them corn and potatoes. Isn't that interesting?
Before they slaughter
That is
them.
why we suggest you hold the corn and the potatoes unless you want to wear it on your rear. Okay. So I'm going to share with you my favorite prayer. And it actually is attributed to St. Francis. It's one I say every day. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. It sort of works with my profession. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in the giving that we receive. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in the dying that we are born to eternal life. Now, I have to tell you, I never really understood, for it is in the giving that we receive, until I became involved in the Daniel Plan. Because what I realized is that when you get this information and you give it away, what you are creating is your own support group, making it more likely you will stay on the program forever.
Right.
But you have to become a warrior. And I want to introduce you to a warrior. So get it, give it away, keep it forever. So this is Lori Heiselman. Lori was the director of the Salvation Army's drug treatment program in Anaheim. Lori stalked me. She would follow me at conferences and want to learn, and she learned to love her brain. And as she learned to love her brain, she realized she had to love her body because she was really overweight. I mean, she's a tiny thing. She's like 4'11". But she had pain and IBS and rosacea, and she's like, oh my goodness. And she took Tana's course. And
she ended up losing over 55 pounds. She lost her rosacea, her IBS, her hot flashes went away. And she just got it. I mean, she's truly a warrior. This woman's amazing. And as she really began to understand this, what really struck her was that she's the director of the Salvation Army's drug rehab program, and she figured out that by not planting this in their program, they were actually contributing to their participants' illness. And that's what really got to her the most. And so she was on a mission. And she said, but we are on such a tight budget, I don't know how we're going to do it. And that's when we said, you have a big brain for a reason. And so I sat down and I helped her revamp their entire menu. And, it took some planning, took some thinking, but we did it. And we did it on a rock bottom budget, and we were not kidding. And so
they got rid of all of the bad food, and there was an uproar, but she's a warrior. She's got a hard spine. And the stories were awesome and amazing. And then she transmitted
one
it
of those guys.
to her grandchildren. So she gets better. Her husband gets better. Her children get better. Her grandchildren get better. The people at work get better. And then her colleagues are going, help me. And so last October, we did our weekend Brain Body Turnaround. And she invited Sherry to the Brain Body Turnaround.
And I got to tell you, when Sherry came, Sherry didn't really want to come. She canceled, then she said she'd come, then she canceled, she said she'd come. So Laura ends up sort of coaxing Sherry to come. And Sherry was resistant. And one of the reasons was not only because Sherry had 200 pounds to lose, but her husband didn't want to do, he had been resistant to ever doing a health program. And her husband was diabetic, and so he was not on board with this. So this was last October. So she attends our 3-day event, and then she starts the program in November. And I have to tell you, it's the funniest thing to me. So I get this letter from her that was February. I get a letter from her, and it says, what the letter says is, I'm failing. I'm frustrated and I'm failing. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Because as I'm reading it, she's like, I've lost 29 pounds. I feel like a failure. I've hit this plateau. I'm frustrated. And she's going on. And I'm like, I'm confused. And so I'm writing back to her. I'm like, I'm not seeing why you're failing. Help me out here. And she says, because my husband's losing weight faster than I am. My whole family is, like, she was not kidding. And so she starts going through this whole thing. My family's doing better than me, and she goes through this whole thing. My husband's off of his insulin, and so I'm like, I write back to her, I'm like, help me out with this. So you hit a little plateau, but you're down 29 pounds. Your husband's off his insulin. And she's like, yes, but I'm competitive. Oh, okay, I think I see the problem now. So now she can't attend. We're having our next one this year in June. She can't be there because she's running her first 5K that happens to be on the same weekend. She's down 51 pounds. Her husband's off of 2 medications. And she wrote to me on Easter weekend and said, not only did the Easter candy not make my radar, it definitely didn't make my basket. My kids don't want it. Her entire family's completely on board. Her husband's down 40 pounds. She's now losing weight faster than he is. And so she's really excited. And I'm like, if that's failure, I want to be a failure like Sherry. And she ends it with count me in. So it's just, this woman is just incredible.
She rocks, and that's what we want for you. We want you to transform not only yourself. It starts with you, right? If your husband won't do it with you, stop making him your excuse. Live, be the change you want to see. Get it. It's in the act of giving. Give it away that you get to keep it forever. And for me, I actually wrote a book called Unleash the Power of the Female Brain because of my experience with the Daniel Plan. Is women just got it faster, and when they got it, everything changed.